Hello everyone, I am Dr. Chaitali Parekh, Consultant Musculoskeletal Interventional Radiologist, practicing at Pulse Chain of Diagnostic Centers Mumbai, Boopathy Urology Center Thane and New Tech Diagnostic Center Kalyan. I have done a fellowship in musculoskeletal diagnostic and interventional imaging, and today we will be discussing ultrasound of the finger, which is a new topic. In this session we will see how we can look at the normal anatomy of the ultrasound and what different scanning techniques we can use to identify their injuries, both for the diagnosis as well as for the follow-up of the patients to assess healing. So for ultrasound of the finger, the position is where you keep the palm on the pillow. So the patient is in a sitting position, there is a pillow and the palm is rested on the pillow. Preferably place both the hands on the pillow so that whenever you need to do a comparative study between the two, you can do it easily. Also, one more thing to note is that the finger is has a very small surface area, and therefore it is advisable to use a small footprint probe like this particular probe, which is a L-shaped hockey stick probe, and it has a very small footprint so that it can be easily placed on the finger. In case if you do not have a small footprint probe, you can use a normal high frequency linear transducer for scanning the finger. Before we start scanning, let's discuss few important ultrasound techniques which are not only useful for ultrasound of the finger but even other musculoskeletal ultrasounds. So for every structure, make sure that you scan both in a longitudinal plane as well as a transverse plane. For ultrasound of structures like the finger, thumb and the wrist, perform general ultrasound of the entire area followed by targeted ultrasound, which will be directed in the region where the patient has maximum pain or the symptoms. The third thing to keep in mind is while scanning the finger, whenever you are in doubt whether a particular structure has some pathology in it or if it is injured or not, it is always advisable to compare with the opposite side. So the next important thing is performing dynamic ultrasound. Dynamic ultrasound is one of the biggest advantage of musculoskeletal ultrasound, which helps to confirm or diagnose injuries of different structures, and it should be used wherever it is applicable. The next important thing is the utilization of color Doppler and power Doppler imaging. Not many people routinely use power Doppler imaging in musculoskeletal ultrasound. However, it is really useful for diagnosis of pathologies like inflammatory arthropathy, infection, synovitis, bursitis and even neuritis. So you should use power Doppler imaging routinely in musculoskeletal ultrasound. And the last thing that I want to stress upon is something called as anisotropy. Whenever you are scanning a patient and you see a hypoechoic area, just instead of scanning like this, just start tilting your probe. And whenever you start tilting the probe, at some particular angle, the ultrasound beam is going to strike the structure exactly at 90 degrees and the structure will appear echogenic again. So before labeling any structure as tendinosis or tear, make sure that you have tilted the probe and confirmed that it is not an anisotropy. So with this now, we'll begin with the ultrasound scanning technique of the finger. Now before we start scanning, the finger can be divided into three compartments. So your first is the flexor compartment or the volar compartment. This is your dorsal or the extensor compartment, and next you have the lateral compartments on both sides, that is the radial and the ulnar side. Now whenever you start scanning, the first and the deepest structure is what you are going to scan is your bones and the joints. Superficial to the bones and the joints, you have got three important soft tissue structures. The first and the deepest one is again the volar plate. Superficial to it, you have the flexor tendons, and the most superficial soft tissue structure is the pulleys. So now first we are looking at the bones. This is your metacarpal. Okay, as you go distally, you can appreciate the metacarpophalangeal joint. As you go further distally, you can see this is the proximal phalanx, and then this is your proximal interphalangeal joint. This is your middle phalanx, distal interphalangeal joint, and this is your distal phalanx. Now we will go to the proximal interphalangeal joint, and now this time we will start looking at the soft tissue structures. And as I have told you, the deepest soft tissue structure is the volar plate, and volar plate appears diffusely echogenic. It has a broad base attachment to on the distal side and a narrow attachment on the proximal side. Injuries of the volar plate will appear hypoechoic, swollen, bulky, often you will see fluid cleft between the bone and the volar plate itself, which will indicate complete tear. Sometimes whenever there is an osseous avulsion, you can see a small echogenic bone piece which will be chipped off from the underlying parent bone, and it will be attached to the volar plate. So the next structure what we are going to look at is the flexor tendons. Now every finger has got two flexor tendons, the flexor digitorum superficialis or the FDS and the flexor digitorum profundus or the FDP. Now as the name suggests, the FDS is the superficial tendon. So at the level of the palm, metacarpal and up to the base of the proximal phalanx, the FDS is a superficial tendon and FDP is the deep tendon. At the level of the base of the proximal phalanx, the FDS is going to split into two tendons, okay, and the two tendons will be traversing like this with separate attachments to the proximal aspect of middle phalanx. So they will be attaching with two separate slips. And the FDP tendon, which was a deeper tendon at the level of the metacarpal, is now going to become superficial. So if these are your two FDS, if this is your two FDS slips, the FDP will pass between the two slips from the cleft that is formed, and it will become superficial. Okay. So after becoming superficial, the FDP will run in the midline all the way up to the base of the distal phalanx, where it will attach to the base of the distal phalanx. So this is the anatomy of the flexor tendons, and now let us just look at on the ultrasound images. So these are the tendons, the flexor tendons at the level of the metacarpal, and you can appreciate the fibrillar structure very nicely. However, it is difficult to differentiate between the FDS and FDP tendon on the longitudinal images, but when you see these tendons on the transverse images, okay, so you can very well see this echogenic tendon on the transverse image, and what it gives is an appearance of a burger or a McDonald burger, where the upper half of the burger is the FDS tendon and the lower half of the burger is the FDP tendon. However, there is no pattis, so you do not have anything between the two tendons. Now as you scan in the transverse plane and you go distally, what you can see is that the superficial tendon, which is the FDP, is actually splitting into two. Okay, it is going laterally, and here you can appreciate that this has a somewhat Mickey Mouse appearance, where the two ears of the Mickey Mouse are formed by the superficialis and the face of the Mickey Mouse is formed by the FDP tendons. And as you go further distally, you can see that the two FDS is going laterally, okay, and as you come at the level of this proximal interphalangeal joint, what you can see is the two FDS tendons are lateral and the central tendon is nothing but the FDP tendon, and it has a hypoechoic area within. And now this is what I was talking about is called as anisotropy. So whenever I tilt the probe, you can see now it has become echogenic, whereas if they tilt the probe in the opposite direction, you can see that the entire tendon appears hypoechoic, and this gives a false impression of tendinosis or a tear. So whenever you see such hypoechoic areas within the tendon, make sure that you tilt the probe and just confirm that that in no angle it should appear echogenic. Only then you can label it as a tendinosis or a tear. And from this point, as you come further distally, at this point you can see that the two superficialis tendons are lateral, and as you go distally you can see that they are becoming deep, and now the superficial tendon has become the FDP tendon and the deeper one is the FDS tendon, and this is almost at the level of the proximal interphalangeal joint. Now at this level, in the proximal aspect of the middle phalanx, the FDS will attach to the bone. However, that insertion is not well appreciated on the transverse plane, and we'll have a look at it on the longitudinal plane. As you scan further distally, you can see that there is only one tendon, okay, and at the level of the distal interphalangeal joint, this tendon will go and attach to the base of the distal phalanx. So this is nothing but your FDP tendon, which is attaching to the base of the distal phalanx. Now here in the longitudinal plane, you can very well see the fibrillar architecture of the FDP tendon, and you can see that it is dipping down and inserting onto the base of the distal phalanx. Now let us look at the insertion of the flexor digitorum superficialis. So this was the insertion of the flexor digitorum profundus, and as you go proximally at the level of the proximal aspect of middle phalanx, this tendon what you are seeing in the midline is the flexor digitorum profundus. FDS, as I have told you, has two separate attachments, but it is not visualized on the midline section. When you try to scan slightly on the radial and the ulnar aspect, you can see this small tendon that is attaching to the bone. This is your FDS tendon, which is the radial slip, and as I scan slightly towards the ulnar side, you can see this another slip that is attaching to the bone, and this is the ulnar slip of the FDS tendon. So you can appreciate the insertion of the tendons very nicely. Again we come back to the FDP tendon, and here you can see that whenever there will be a tear of this tendon, instead of this fibrillar echogenic architecture, what will be visualized is a fluid filled gap. An osseous avulsion will be seen as a osseous chip that is attached to the tendon, and the tendon may be retracted to any length along the finger or even in the palm. So it is easy to diagnose these flexor tendon tears. Another important thing which will help you is obviously comparison with the opposite side. Another thing which is really helpful is your dynamic examination. So whenever you want to specifically test for FDP tendon, make it a point to fix your FDS tendon, which can be done by putting a pressure at the level of the middle phalanx or the proximal interphalangeal joint, so that the FDS tendon does not move, and tell the patient to actively flex the finger. This is how I am applying a pressure on the middle phalanx to prevent the movement of the proximal interphalangeal joint, and the tendon that you can see is the superficial one is the flexor digitorum profundus, and the distal one, the deeper one is the flexor digitorum superficialis. Now I will ask him, now if you see he is trying to flex his distal interphalangeal joint, and simultaneously you can appreciate the movement of the superficial tendon, which is nothing but the FDP tendon, and this is how dynamic examination is helpful. Now finger flex kara. Now you can see that both the tendons are moving smoothly. It is gliding back and forth, and this is nothing but FDP and FDS both moving, because both the joints are flexing at this point in time. So if there is a complete tear of the tendon, and first thing the patient will not be able to flex the finger because the FDP is torn, so the flexion at the DIP joint will be lost. And whenever I will try to passively flex the finger, as in this case, as you can see, when I am trying to passively flex, the tendon is moving along with the bone. But if there is a complete tear of the tendon will not move along with the bone, because it is no longer attached to the underlying bone, and that is how you can confirm the diagnosis of tear of the FDP tendon, which is also called as jersey finger. So now the last structure in the flexor compartment, which is a superficial most structure, is the pulley. Now in the finger there are annular pulleys and cruciform pulleys, but annular pulleys are more important and we will be stressing on those. There are 5 annular pulleys from A1 to A5. So now let us look at the pulleys individually. So these are your 2 flexor tendons, you can see them very nicely, which is going to the middle finger, and here at the level of the head you can see a thin anisotropic band which is overlying the flexor tendon. This is your A1 pulley, because it is at the level of the metacarpal head. Normally the A1 pulley is about half to 1 millimeter, that's it, only that much is the thickness of the pulleys. So whenever there is a injury of the pulley appears hypoechoic and thickened, and you can compare it with the other pulleys to assess the difference in the thickness. Now pulleys are often difficult to appreciate on longitudinal planes when they are normal. Here you can see a thin hypoechoic band over the flexor tendon, and this is your pulley. When it is thickened, you can easily appreciate the thickened pulley even on longitudinal planes. One important concept for the pulley is something called as bowstringing. Before that, let us understand what is the function of the pulley. So pulley, they act as ligament kind of straps, okay, for the flexor tendons, so that whenever you try to flex the finger, the tendon remains in close opposition to the bone. Whenever there is a pulley injury, there will be increase in the distance between the tendon and the underlying bone, and whenever that distance becomes more than 3 millimeters, it is called as bowstringing. In case if you cannot appreciate the increase in the distance on the resting stage, then the another way to accentuate this bowstringing is on dynamic examination, where we tell the patient to flex the finger and simultaneously a extension force is applied at the fingertip. So this is nothing but forced flexion against resistance, and what you will see is increase in the gap between the tendon and the bone. With this, the flexor compartment or the volar compartment examination is done. Now next we look at the extensor or the dorsal compartment. In the dorsal compartment, the bones and the joints are the same, so we won't be discussing them again. The soft tissue structures, the important ones are the extensor tendon and the extensor hood. In the extensor hood, there are three structures, of which the most important is the sagittal band, and we will be concentrating on that. So first let us just look at the extensor tendon. So every finger you have got one extensor tendon, okay, and here in the middle finger you can see this echogenic structure. This is your extensor tendon, okay, which we are looking at the level of the metacarpal. Now as you cross the level of the metacarpophalangeal joint, where the central arrow is pointing to the central slip, which is a slightly hypoechoic in appearance because of anisotropy, and the two lateral arrows or the two side arrows are pointing towards the two lateral slips. Now we will look at the same tendons in the longitudinal planes. So here now I am scanning at the level of the proximal phalanx, okay, and what I see over here is a thin hypoechoic band overlying the bone, and this is nothing but the central slip because I am scanning in the midline position. And as I come at the level of the proximal interphalangeal joint, I can clearly appreciate that the thin band is going and attaching to the base of the middle phalanx. Now further on, as I go distally, I do not see any tendon or any hypoechoic band in this region. However, when I reach the level of the distal interphalangeal joint, I can see a hypoechoic band which is attaching to the base of the distal phalanx, and this is nothing but the terminal tendon. So the injury of the distal or the terminal tendon is called as the mallet finger, where you can appreciate a fluid filled gap between the tendon and the bone attachment. The tendon can be retracted to some extent, and fluid filled gap is very well visualized. Also the osseous avulsion which can happen in mallet finger is also well appreciated on ultrasound, where you can see a osseous bone piece that is attached to the tendon but avulsed off from the underlying bone. Similarly, you can also identify the injuries of the central slip, which can be seen at the level of the proximal interphalangeal joint on the longitudinal plane. The next structure to look at is the extensor hood, particularly the sagittal band. Sagittal bands are present at the level of the head of the metacarpal, and at this level you can see the central echogenic structure, which is oval shaped, is your extensor tendon, and you can see thin hypoechoic bands just like what we saw, like the pulleys on the flexor compartment. Similar to that, you can see thin hypoechoic bands on both the sides, and these are nothing but the sagittal band. Now sagittal band injuries can result into dislocation of the extensor tendons, particularly when there is a sagittal band tear. The thing to keep in mind is, whenever there is an injury of the sagittal band, the extensor tendon dislocates on the opposite side. So for example, if there is an injury of the radial band, the tendon will dislocate on the ulnar side. And how can you accentuate this is by dynamic examination, where you can ask the patient to flex the finger. So you can see that the tendon is moving in this particular patient. However, because the sagittal bands are intact, the tendon is not dislocating. Whenever the sagittal band is injured, it will appear thickened, hypoechoic, and there may be a fluid filled gap which could be visualized. So the last part what we are going to look at is your collateral ligaments in the lateral compartment. So right now I am scanning at the collateral ligament on the ulnar side. So this is the ulnar collateral ligament of the proximal interphalangeal joint, and what you can see is there is a hypoechoic or an anisotropic band that is visualized on this aspect overlying the bones, and this is nothing but your ulnar collateral ligament. Now injuries of the ulnar or of any collateral ligament, the ligament you can see a completely torn ligament. Partial injuries will be seen as a hypoechoic area thickened ligament, and again dynamic examination is important where you can apply a valgus or a varus force. So on this patient, when I'll apply a force directed on the radial side, okay, so now you can see that I am trying to apply a force on the radial side, but there is no significant opening of the joint space, which means that the tendon, which means that the ligament is intact. If the ligament was injured, there will be an opening of the joint space at this particular level, and this also can be compared with the joint spaces of other fingers or of the same finger of the opposite hand. So with this session, you can clearly understand that ultrasound of the finger is easy. You can identify the important smaller structures easily on the ultrasound, as well as identify their injuries and pathologies. The key takeaway points from this session is to keep in mind that anisotropy exists, and to rule out anisotropy before you diagnose a tendinosis or a tear. Second is to compare. Whenever in doubt, make sure you compare that particular structure with the other fingers or with the same finger of the opposite hand, and please perform dynamic ultrasound while assessing the ligaments and the tendons, because that is the biggest advantage that you can get from an ultrasound examination, which is not possible with an MRI examination. So with this short conclusion, I'll end the session. Thank you.